are Rolex watches made in China. So what I know to be true, and having seen with my own beady little eyes while working at Swatch Group, who own, is that they have bracelets, dials, cases, hands, movement components, all made in China. I've seen the packaging for them, I've seen the country of origin stamped on them, I know that to be true. Rolex mass-produced watches are the best mass-produced watches you can get. They make, what, 1.2 to 1.5 million watches a year. They're not made by hand. They're made on a production line. They do machine pretty much everything. There's no hand finishing. It doesn't take them a year to make a watch. They're the best mass-produced watch. They're the Toyota Corolla of watches.
打包之后好漂亮哦。半成品的表带。哦，磨了之后它就不会擦手了。打包之后好漂亮哦。
On my arm, it's real. Don't love me because of no diamonds. Take all this. This bracelet right here look real as a. This shit was $23.
Is wearing a fake Louis Vuitton fanny pack and she didn't know it. I'm gonna give you 3 reasons why I know that this Louis Vuitton bag.
Speaking to this client here regarding selling her Birkin 30 Gris Etane, if I'm not wrong. Gris Etane is the color and it's palladium hardware. The bag is in box fresh condition but it's Y stamp, which means it's a 2020.
In the world of luxury watches, names like Rolex, Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, and Omega command respect and admiration. These brands evoke images of exclusivity, meticulous craftsmanship, and timeless elegance. When you buy one of these watches, you're not just purchasing a piece of fine machinery, you're buying into an entire lifestyle, a story, and a tradition. The idea of a highly trained Swiss artisan, with decades of experience, carefully assembling each piece by hand is part of the allure. But here's the catch. What if I told you that much of that myth is just that, a myth? What if I told you that many of these so-called Swiss-made watches aren't made in Switzerland at all? In fact, some of the most prestigious luxury watches are manufactured in China, and their origins are far more complex than you've been led to believe. When we think of Swiss watches, we picture the quiet workshops nestled in the Swiss Alps, where experienced watchmakers craft each piece of machinery with the precision of a surgeon. We imagine old craftsmen sitting at wooden benches, surrounded by intricate tools and delicate components, working tirelessly to create a mechanical marvel that will last for generations. But that romantic vision of watchmaking, passed down through generations, is increasingly being overshadowed by a more modern reality.
Swiss watches really made in China? I went to Shenzhen to find out. It's the epicenter of Chinese watch manufacturing, and according to this one expert,
Tissot make about 4 million watches a year, 300 watchmakers in Switzerland. Do the math.
there's compelling evidence that Swiss made on the dial doesn't mean the watch was made or constructed in Switzerland. When I did find the higher quality knockoffs, they all pointed me in the direction of one particular factory. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me film inside, but I can tell you the quality was very high. Certainly lots of micro brands manufacture in Shenzhen, as well as lots of big.
The rise of Chinese manufacturing in the luxury watch sector. Let's start with a few facts that may surprise you. Shenzhen, a sprawling tech hub in China, is home to some of the most advanced watch manufacturing factories in the world. Now, before you dismiss this as some sort of under-the-radar, low-cost assembly line, let me set the record straight. These factories are massive, state-of-the-art facilities, brimming with cutting-edge machinery, CNC machines, laser engraving systems, sapphire crystal polishers, and robotic assembly lines capable of creating highly complex, precision-engineered components. And these aren't just the components for the cheaper, no-name brands you might expect to find on eBay. No, these same factories are the ones responsible for creating parts for some of the most prestigious Swiss luxury watch brands. It's easy to dismiss the idea that luxury watches could come from China. After all, we've been conditioned to believe that Swiss-made means only Switzerland, right? But here's the kicker. The global watchmaking industry has evolved, and many of these factories produce the very parts that make a Rolex or an Omega. Well, a Rolex or an Omega. Many luxury watch brands rely on Chinese manufacturers to produce high-quality watch components like cases, bezels, bracelets, and even dials. If you've ever bought a luxury Swiss watch, there's a good chance the parts were made in China before they were sent to Switzerland for final assembly and branding.
I got fired from Swatch Group today for talking about their products on TikTok. Before we get into the reasons why I was fired, just for the people that don't know, Swatch Group is a large Swiss watch group that comprises brands like Omega, Longines, Tissot, Breguet, Blancpain, Rado, Hamilton, and of course Swatch. One of the reasons that I got fired was for this video where I talk about how Swiss watch brands say they service your watch but actually just swap out the movement for a new one, and that was classified as a breach of company confidentiality. Oh, and also, how could I forget when I talked about how Omega parts for watches weren't made in Switzerland but were instead made in China. That's probably a big one.
Now, let's be clear. This is not a case of counterfeiting or selling inferior knockoffs. This is a legitimate practice where high-grade materials and advanced machinery come together to produce some of the most technically impressive watches on the market. But what about the iconic Swiss movements? Surely, those are made in Switzerland, right? Yes, but only part of the movement. Some of the key components in these movements, such as the balance wheel, escapement, and spring, are often produced in China or Japan. The final assembly of these parts happens in Switzerland, where they are carefully put together, tested, and calibrated. But, and this is important, these parts are often sourced from suppliers outside of Switzerland, and sometimes even from China. So how does this all fit into the traditional Swiss-made label? Well, the answer lies in the legal definition of Swiss-made. According to Swiss law, for a watch to be considered Swiss-made, 60% of its manufacturing cost must come from Switzerland. That's not 60% of the parts, mind you, just the total cost, which includes things like labor, assembly, packaging, and design. This means that a watch can be made entirely in China, but as long as the final assembly and a portion of the cost is in Switzerland, it can still carry the prestigious Swiss-made label. Now, don't get me wrong, this doesn't mean the entire watch industry is a scam. Far from it. There are still plenty of Swiss-made watches that are fully assembled in Switzerland, using parts that are sourced from within the country. But when you see that Swiss-made logo on the back of a watch, it doesn't always mean what you might think. It's no longer a guarantee of full Swiss craftsmanship. In many cases, it's simply a brand strategy designed to give the watch that coveted status symbol. The funny thing is, most consumers have no idea how much of the work behind these luxury timepieces is done outside of Switzerland. When you look at a Rolex or a Patek Philippe, you might imagine a team of Swiss artisans toiling away, but the truth is, much of the production work is being done by highly skilled workers in China, who have access to the same machinery, the same materials, and in many cases, the same workers who help produce components for the most famous luxury brands. But if China is producing the same components with the same precision, why are luxury Swiss watches so much more expensive than their Chinese-made counterparts? The answer, as you might suspect, lies in marketing. Luxury watch companies don't just sell a watch, they sell a story, an image of sophistication, tradition, and exclusivity. This is why you're not just paying for the actual components and the assembly, you're paying for the perception of luxury. There's a certain mystique that surrounds Swiss watchmaking. The idea of rare, hand-finished pieces being carefully crafted in a remote workshop plays into our love for tradition and high craftsmanship. And that mystique has been carefully cultivated by decades of smart advertising, sponsorships, and high-profile partnerships. It's a formula that's worked incredibly well. But when you peel back the layers, you realize that much of what you're paying for is the brand, not the actual craftsmanship. It's not just the watchmakers who are in on this game. Watch brand executives, marketers, and even the media all have a vested interest in maintaining this illusion. Luxury watch brands spend millions on advertising, sponsoring events, and collaborating with influencers to reinforce the image of old-world artisanship. But what's often hidden behind the scenes is that many of the components of these watches come from mass production factories in places like Shenzhen, where workers, just as skilled as their Swiss counterparts, create these components at a fraction of the cost. The truth is slowly starting to come to light, though. Whistleblowers, factory workers, and former employees of high-end watch brands have been sharing stories about what really goes on behind closed doors. They've revealed that some of the most popular Swiss watches are partially or mostly assembled in China. The companies themselves are using clever legal loopholes to continue marketing their products as Swiss-made, even though the components come from all over the world. For example, many watches that you might assume are 100% Swiss are, in reality, made with the exact same materials, in the same factories, and sometimes on the same production lines as unbranded, non-luxury watches. The only difference is the brand name on the dial. So, when you buy a luxury watch, you're often paying for the privilege of wearing a logo, not the actual craftsmanship. One of the most eye-opening trends in recent years has been the rise of Chinese direct-to-consumer watch brands. These companies are offering consumers the chance to purchase watches made in the same factories as their high-end Swiss counterparts, but at a fraction of the cost. These watches aren't knockoffs or fakes, they're real, high-quality timepieces that often feature the same materials and movements found in luxury brands. The only thing missing? The Swiss label and the inflated price tag. Take a moment to consider this. A luxury Swiss watch might retail for $10,000, but the actual cost of production is likely between $1,500 and $2,000. The rest of that price tag covers things like distribution, marketing, the brand's image, and the exclusivity of the label. Meanwhile, a watch made in China with the same materials, movements, and engineering can be sold for a fraction of that price. Is the luxury truly in the watch, or is it in the brand name? In the end, the question is not just about the quality of the watch or where it's made. It's about the value you place on the story that comes with it. Luxury watches are more than just timekeepers. They're symbols of status, achievement, and a connection to a centuries-old tradition of craftsmanship. But as consumers become more aware of the realities behind the watchmaking industry, it's possible that the definition of luxury might shift. Perhaps, in the future, we'll find that the true value of a watch lies not in where it was made, but in how much genuine craftsmanship and attention to detail went into its creation, whether in Switzerland, China, or anywhere else in the world. As the market changes, and more information comes to light, it's crucial to rethink what we value in a watch. Is it the brand name that dictates quality, or is it the craftsmanship and precision that truly matter? As we move forward, the idea of what makes a luxury watch will undoubtedly evolve. And for those who have been part of the watch community for years, the question becomes, will the future of luxury watches be more about authenticity than marketing? Only time will tell.